In today's video, I want to tell you about the night that changed everything. The night I realized that the boy I had raised for 16 years was not the same person I thought he was. You think you know your child. You think you can read every look, every silence, every small lie, but then something happens that makes you question if you ever knew them at all. That's exactly what happened to me. He was just my son until that night showed me a side of him I'd never seen before. It started out like any other evening. The air outside carried that quiet chill of autumn, the kind that makes you close the windows but leave the curtains open just to watch the rain. He was upstairs in his room, music playing softly under the hum of the house. I was making dinner, half listening to the news, half thinking about how fast time had gone by. He used to run into the kitchen with scraped knees and stories about school. Now, he barely looked up from his phone. I thought it was just teenage distance. Every parent goes through it, right? But that night proved it was something else. Something I never saw coming. When the clock struck 9, I remember calling his name. No answer. I climbed the stairs, half annoyed, half worried. The door to his room was slightly open, and inside, the light flickered from his desk lamp. He wasn't there. At first, I thought maybe he'd stepped out to meet a friend, but then I noticed his phone on the bed, screen glowing with an unread message. My heart skipped. It wasn't from a friend. It was from a number I didn't recognize, just a few words that sent a shiver through me. It's time. That's when I felt it, that strange, cold feeling that something wasn't right. Parents talk about gut instinct, but until that moment I never truly understood what that meant. I rushed outside, calling his name into the night, my voice echoing through the empty street. The only sound was the wind and the distant bark of a dog. And then I saw it, his bicycle, lying by the old oak tree at the corner, one wheel spinning slowly as if he'd left in a hurry. What happened next? I still can't find the right words for it. That night didn't just change how I saw my son, it changed how I saw the world. Every truth I believed in began to crumble, and I started to wonder, what else had he been hiding? Stay with me, because what I discovered next left me frozen in disbelief. This isn't just a story about a parent and a child. It's a story about secrets, choices, and the moment you realize that sometimes the people you love the most are the ones you know the least. I ran toward the oak tree, my heart pounding so loudly it felt like it might break through my chest. The streetlights flickered above me, casting long, thin shadows that made everything feel colder, emptier. His bike was there, but there was no sign of him. I called his name again once, twice, but the night swallowed my voice whole. My hands were shaking as I stood there in the quiet street. Memories began to flood back, small things I hadn't paid attention to before. The late nights, when he said he was studying but kept locking his door. The hushed phone calls that stopped when I entered the room. The days he seemed distracted, his eyes distant, like his thoughts were somewhere else entirely. I told myself it was just teenage mood swings, that he needed space. I didn't want to pry. But now, standing in the dark, I realized maybe I should have asked more questions. I went back home, my mind spinning. The clock read 9:47 p.m., and the house felt emptier than ever. His favorite hoodie hung by the stairs, the one I'd washed that morning. I touched it, and for a second, I felt like he was still there, just upstairs like nothing had happened. But the silence was too loud, too heavy. I grabbed my car keys and drove around the neighborhood, checking the park, the old bridge, even a corner store. Every place felt wrong, like he had disappeared into thin air. And then, something strange happened. As I turned the car around, my phone buzzed. It was his number. My hands trembled as I answered, whispering his name. But no one spoke. All I could hear was faint breathing on the other end, slow and uneven, like someone was trying not to be heard. I kept asking, "Where are you? Please, just tell me where you are." The silence stretched until finally, a voice, not his, whispered, "He's not who you think he is." And then the call ended. I just sat there, frozen, the phone pressed to my ear, my mind refusing to believe what I'd just heard. My son, not who I think he is. What could that even mean? I stared at the dark road ahead, knowing that something. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his empty room, that message on the phone, and heard that voice whispering, "He's not who you think he is." I sat by the window, watching the rain hit the glass, wondering how everything could change so quickly. Part of me wanted to believe it was all a misunderstanding, that he'd walk through the front door any second and laugh at how worried I was. But another part of me, the part that had heard the fear in that voice, knew better. By morning, I decided to retrace his steps. I started with the places he used to go, the park where he'd play basketball, the small library down the street, even the bus stop. People knew him there. Everyone described him the same way, polite, quiet, always keeping to himself. But then one old shopkeeper said something that made my stomach twist. He wasn't alone yesterday, he told me. There was someone with him. A man I hadn't seen before. They argued for a bit, then left together. That was the first time I realized my son might have been hiding more than just teenage secrets. At home, I searched through his things, his drawers, his backpack, even under the bed. That's when I found a small notebook tucked behind a pile of clothes. Inside were scribbled notes, strange drawings, and words I couldn't make sense of, phrases like "they're watching" and "don't trust anyone." I could feel my heart pounding faster with every page. What had he gotten himself into? I wanted to go to the police, but something stopped me. If someone had called from his phone, maybe they were watching us. Maybe going to the wrong person could make things worse. For the first time in my life, I felt completely powerless and complete. That night, the house felt heavier than ever, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. I sat in the living room with the notebook in my hands, reading every page over and over, trying to find something that made sense. One page had a small map drawn on it, just a few lines, a street name I recognized, and a mark near an old warehouse by the edge of town. My hands trembled as I traced it with my finger. It wasn't far. I didn't even think twice. I grabbed my coat, the car keys, and drove. The streets were empty, lit only by the dull glow of streetlights. The closer I got to the warehouse, the colder it felt. My heart raced with every turn. I kept hearing my son's voice in my head, his laughter, the way he used to call me when he needed help. That memory hurt now, like something slipping away. When I finally stopped the car, the warehouse stood silent and dark, the windows broken, the air thick with that strange, metallic smell that comes after rain. I stepped out slowly, my flashlight cutting through the shadows. Every sound made me jump, the creak of the wind, the rustle of something unseen. Then I saw it, his backpack. It was lying near the door, half covered in dirt. I dropped to my knees, my chest tightening as I reached for it. Inside were some of his things, a notebook, a water bottle, a folded photograph of the two of us. My hands shook as I pulled it out. And that's when I heard it, a faint sound coming from deep inside the warehouse. A low, muffled cry. I froze. My heart was pounding so fast I could barely breathe. I took one step forward, whispering his name into the darkness. And then, something moved. The sound came again, louder this time and closer. I held my breath, every muscle in my body tense. My flashlight flickered as I slowly stepped forward, calling his name again, barely above a whisper. The echo of my own voice bounced off the cold concrete walls, making it hard to tell where the sound was really coming from. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement, a shadow slipping behind one of the rusted pillars. My pulse spiked. I turned the light in that direction, but there was nothing. Just dust floating in the beam. I took another step, and that's when I saw it. A door at the back of the warehouse, slightly open, a faint light leaking through the crack. I could hear something behind it now, like muffled voices. I moved closer, careful not to make a sound. When I pushed the door open, what I saw made me freeze. The room was small, lit by a single hanging bulb. Papers were scattered everywhere. Maps, photos, strange notes pinned to the wall. And right in the middle of it all was a table with pictures of my son. Dozens of them. Different places, different times, some of them taken without him knowing. My heart sank. Who had been watching him, and why? Then I heard footsteps behind me. I turned quickly, expecting to see him, but instead there was a man standing in the shadows. I couldn't make out his face, but He stepped closer. I turned to look, and when I turned back, the man was gone. The air felt colder now, heavier, like the walls were closing in. I could hear something behind that second door, a sound that was too familiar to ignore. My son's voice. Weak, distant, and scared. I took a step toward it, my heart pounding in my throat, knowing that whatever was behind that door would change everything. My hands were trembling as I reached for the handle of that second door. Every instinct in me screamed to turn back, but I couldn't. I pushed it open, and the sight before me stopped my breath. There he was, my son, sitting on the floor, his wrists tied, his face pale but his eyes wide open. When he saw me, a single word escaped his lips. Mom. I ran to him, kneeling beside him, trying to untie the ropes, but before I could, that same man stepped out from the shadows again. Only this time, I could finally see his face. He looked older, tired, but familiar. There was something in his eyes I recognized, but couldn't place. Please, I said, just tell me what this is. Why are you doing this? He looked at me, then at my son, and sighed.
You don't understand.
He found out things he shouldn't have. We were trying to stop him before he made it worse. I turned to my son, confused and scared. What is he talking about? He shook his head, tears running down his face. I was trying to protect you, Mom. They were using your name, your information. Everything. I found out someone was following us. I tried to warn you, but when they found out, they came for me. The man stepped, they untied my son, and let us out. The flashing red and blue lights painted his face, and for the first time in what felt like forever, he looked like my boy again. But as the officers searched the building, one of them came back holding something, a photograph. It was old, faded, and it wasn't of my son. It was of me, standing outside our home, taken from a distance. My stomach turned cold. I looked at my son, and he looked at me the same way, like we both suddenly realized this wasn't over. Whoever had started this still knew where we lived. The ride home that night was quiet. My son sat beside me, staring out the window as the city lights passed by. Neither of us said much. We didn't need to. Too much had happened in too little time. I kept glancing at him, trying to take in the fact that he was really there, alive, safe, breathing beside me. But that photograph wouldn't leave my mind. Someone had taken it without us knowing. Someone had been watching us for a long time. When we got home, the house felt different. The silence wasn't peaceful anymore. It was heavy, filled with unspoken questions. I made him some tea, just like I used to when he was younger. For a moment, it felt almost normal. He looked tired, older somehow, like he had seen things no one his age should ever see. I finally asked the question I had been afraid to ask all night. Who were they? He took a deep breath before answering. I don't know, Mom.
But they weren't after me.
They were after you. I think I just got in the way. My hands went cold. I wanted to believe it wasn't true, but deep down, I knew there were things from my past I had never talked about, people I had once trusted, choices I had buried. Maybe the truth had finally caught up to me. A week passed. The police said they were still investigating, but the warehouse was empty when they returned. No fingerprints, no records, no sign of the man who had spoken to me that night. It was as if he had vanished completely. Life slowly started to settle again, though it didn't feel the same. We were both different now, stronger, maybe, but also more careful. Every shadow outside, every knock at the door made us pause. One evening, as I was locking up, I noticed an envelope on the doorstep. No name, no address, just a single photograph inside. It was a picture of me and my son, sitting at the kitchen table earlier that week. I felt the air leave my lungs. On the back, in small handwriting, were 3 words. He kept his promise. I looked out into the quiet street, feeling both fear and relief mix inside me. Maybe some stories don't really end, they just change shape. And that night, I realized one thing for sure. Sometimes the people we think we're protecting are the ones protecting us all along.